I'm walking later than usual tonight. The evening air is warm, almost sticky, but in a comforting way that draws me toward the river. The city feels unusually quiet, like it's holding its breath. The air smells of rain, a premonition of a storm yet to break. I love losing myself in the little streets and alleys that most people ignore. Tonight, I find myself wandering through the back streets near the waterfront, behind the old warehouses that have been turned into trendy bars and restaurants. The night feels too good to rush, so I find an outdoor table at a bar, order a glass of wine, and settle in to watch the few people passing by. There's a man at the next table who catches my eye. He's attractive in a rugged, unconventional way, probably a few years older than me. His hair is a messy dark brown, framing a face that could be described as handsome if it wasn't for the lines etched around his eyes, hinting at a life lived with grit and intensity. He's wearing a worn leather jacket over a dark t-shirt, and his jeans are faded and ripped at the knees. From where I sit, I can see the faint outline of a tattoo on his forearm, a spiderweb design, perhaps, or maybe something more sinister. Our eyes meet at first in fleeting glances, then in longer, more intentional stares. I can tell he's undressing me with his eyes, making no effort to be subtle about it. I can't help but feel flattered, and the warmth of the night, mixed with the wine, gives me the confidence to flirt back, just a little. I raise my glass to him in a silent toast, and he smiles, a slow, predatory grin that sends a shiver down my spine. But suddenly, he downs his drink and leaves. I feel a pang of disappointment at the missed opportunity, the chance to learn a little more about him. It's getting darker now, so I finish my wine, maybe a little too fast, and decide to explore the narrow streets further. The air is heavy with the scent of salt and something else, something faintly metallic, like blood. I dismiss it as my imagination, but a prickle of unease runs down my spine. I wander deeper into the maze of tiny streets I've never ventured into before. Old warehouse buildings loom above me, casting long shadows. The alleys, with their chipped brick walls and steel fire escapes, are eerily quiet. The silence is broken by the distant rumble of a train, and the hiss of a rusty pipe leaking water somewhere in the darkness. But I love this hidden, grimy part of the city. There's something exhilarating about being out here alone, with only my thoughts and the occasional rustle of wind to keep me company. Suddenly, I hear a noise behind me. A soft, scraping sound, like metal on brick. I spin around, but there's no one there. My heart skips a beat, but my curiosity wins out over my fear, and I keep walking, a little quicker now. The sound has unnerved me, but I'm still drawn to venture deeper. Maybe it was just a stray cat, or maybe the wind playing tricks on me. Around the next corner, I come face to face with a dark figure. He's standing in my path, his stance deliberate, his chest puffed out in a way that makes him seem broader, more imposing. I inhale sharply, fear gripping my chest as he steps closer. The streetlight above casts a sickly yellow glow on his face, revealing the same rugged features I had noticed at the bar. But the eyes are different now. They are cold, hard, and predatory, and they hold me captive in their gaze. Before I can react, his hand is over my mouth, muffling my scream. The touch is rough, calloused, and he smells of sweat and something else, something metallic, like the scent I noticed earlier. He pulls me into a brick archway, spinning me around so I'm facing the cold, rough wall. His arm is tight around my throat, holding me still. My body presses against the brick, and I can feel the uneven surface digging into my flesh. "Don't make a sound." His voice is a low growl, raspy and threatening. "You don't want to attract attention." I try to speak, but my voice is lost in his grip. I can only manage a strangled whimper. He tightens his grip, and I feel his breath on the back of my neck, hot and humid. He presses his body against mine, pushing me harder into the wall. His arm remains firm around my throat, while his other hand moves around to the front of my body. "You're beautiful," he whispers, his voice a husky rasp against my ear. "You know that, right?" His words are laced with a dark kind of charm, a seductive cruelty that sends a shiver through me. I try to struggle, to break free, but his grip is too strong. He grabs the strap of my dress, pulling it off my shoulder. Then the other. Roughly and with urgency, he kisses my shoulders, biting down on the sensitive skin of my neck. I flinch, tears welling up in my eyes, but he ignores my discomfort, his lips moving down my back, leaving a trail of hot, damp kisses. With one swift motion, he yanks the dress down, his hand moving to cup my breast. His grip is hard and rough, and I can't help but wince at the mix of pain and pleasure as he squeezes. His fingers dig into my skin, and I feel a strange tingling sensation, a mix of fear and excitement, that I can't quite understand. His hands are everywhere, exploring my body with a brutal intensity. He lifts the front of my dress and grabs my inner thigh, squeezing and kneading as he forces my legs apart. His breathing becomes a snarl, his mouth and nose always in contact with my skin. He cups me between my legs, his palm pressing hard against me. I can't stop a moan from escaping my lips, and he tightens his grip on my throat in response, his fingers teasing my slit through the fabric of my underwear. We stay like this for what feels like an eternity, locked together, barely moving, the night around us silent except for the smallest of noises from under my dress. The smell of the damp brick walls and the metallic tang of the night air fill my nostrils. The air is thick with his scent, a mix of sweat and something else, something dark and unsettling. But then, he needs more. He yanks my underwear down to my thighs, lifting my dress from behind and forcing me forward against the brick. His fingers part my cheeks, then my lips, exposing me to the cool night air. I feel him spit in his hand, expecting to need the lubrication, but I'm already soaked. He tightens his grip on my throat and releases his cock, pulling me towards him before thrusting inside me with a guttural snarl. The back of my neck burns from his bites, his saliva cooling on my skin. With every stroke, he presses my face harder into the rough, unforgiving brick. He makes no attempt to be gentle. His movements are harsh and forceful, his thrusts deep and powerful. I feel a sharp pain, a tearing sensation, and a wave of nausea washes over me. But I'm frozen, trapped in his grip, unable to move, unable to escape. The sound of a train rattles overhead, shaking the ground beneath us. It roars and screeches, drowning out everything else. When it finally passes, I'm left lying in a heap on the cold ground under the railway arch, my underwear tangled around my ankles. My thighs are sticky with dried semen, and my body aches all over. I turn my head, wincing at the sharp pain in my neck. I gingerly touch the spot, finding 2 jagged holes at the center of the bruise, tender and throbbing. He's gone. Disappeared into the shadows as quickly as he appeared. I lie there, my body trembling, my mind reeling. The initial shock is fading, giving way to a cold, stark realization of what's happened. I was assaulted, ravaged, left to lie in the dirt like discarded trash. I try to pull myself together, to stand, but a wave of dizziness washes over me. My legs are weak, my body heavy with exhaustion. I manage to sit up, leaning against the cold brick wall, my head throbbing in time with the distant rumble of the train. I try to remember, to piece together the events of the night, to make sense of what happened. I remember the man at the bar, his predatory gaze, his slow, lingering smile. I remember the fear, the helplessness, the pain. And most of all, I remember the metallic scent, the unsettling feeling that something was wrong, something sinister, lurking in the shadows. Now, that feeling is all too real. I try to find my phone, but it's gone. I must have dropped it somewhere, maybe when he was pulling me into the archway. I drag myself to my feet, my body protesting with every move. I'm dirty, my clothes torn, my body bruised and aching. I feel violated, exposed, and utterly alone. I wander out of the alley, back into the street. The city feels different now, the shadows seem deeper, the silence more ominous. The air still smells of salt, but now there's a metallic tang, a sharp, acrid scent that clings to my clothes, a constant reminder of what happened. I make my way back to the bar, hoping to find someone, anyone, who can help. But the bar is empty, the lights are out, the doors locked. The city is asleep, and I am left alone, lost in the darkness, with my own thoughts to keep me company. I wander around, trying to retrace my steps, but everything looks different now, distorted by the fear that curdles in my stomach. The streets are empty, the shadows seem to writhe and shift, as if they are alive, watching me. I hear a noise, a rustling in the darkness, and I jump, my heart hammering against my ribs. I see a figure in the distance, standing beneath a streetlight. It's the man from the bar, the same rugged features, the same hard eyes. He's watching me, his gaze fixed on me, and for a moment, I think my mind is playing tricks on me. But then, he smiles, a slow, menacing grin, and I know with absolute certainty that it's him. I turn and run, scrambling down the street, my bare feet hitting the cold pavement, my breath coming in ragged gasps. But he's fast, and he's gaining on me. I can hear his heavy breathing, feel the fear that courses through my veins, and I know that I have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I turn a corner, hoping to lose him in the maze of narrow streets, but there he is, waiting for me, arms crossed, a mocking smile on his face. "You thought you could escape me?" he says, his voice a low growl. "I'm not so easily shaken." I stumble back, my body shaking with terror. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. His eyes are cold and calculating, his smile is predatory. He takes a step towards me, and I know that I'm trapped. There's no escape, no hope, only the cold, hard reality of my situation. He leans in close, his breath warm against my skin, and whispers, "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. Not yet, anyway." He grabs my arm, his grip like a steel trap. He pulls me closer, his body pressed against mine, and then, he kisses me. It's a cold, hard kiss, filled with a terrifying kind of intimacy. It's a kiss that speaks of domination, of power, of control. And in that moment, I know that I'm not going to escape him. I'm not going to escape this night, not this city, not this nightmare that is unfolding before me. He pulls back, his eyes glittering with a strange, unnatural light. "You're mine now," he says, his voice a low rasp. "And I'm going to have my fun." And then, he drags me away, deeper into the darkness, back into the maze of narrow streets, back into the night that promises only pain and anguish. The night is alive, and it's hungry. And I am its prey. I had always been fascinated by the supernatural, and my friends and I would often dabble in séances and Ouija boards. But little did I know that one fateful night, our innocent curiosity would unleash a horrifying entity upon us. We sat in a circle, our fingers resting lightly on the planchette as we whispered into the darkness. We asked the usual questions, seeking contact with the spirit world. At first, nothing happened. But then, the planchette began to move, spelling out words and answers to our questions. It was exhilarating, the thrill of speaking to something beyond the veil. But as the session went on, I felt a growing sense of unease. The entity we had summoned was not what we expected. It was malevolent, its answers growing more aggressive and menacing as the night wore on. And then, without warning, it lashed out. The planchette flew across the room, striking me in the chest with a force that knocked the wind out of me. I stumbled backwards, my heart racing as I tried to catch my breath. That's when I felt a searing pain in my neck, like nothing I had ever experienced before. I looked down to see a creature, its face twisted into a grotesque snarl as it clamped its jaws onto my flesh. It was a demon, its eyes glowing with a dark, malevolent energy as it drank deeply from my veins. The pain was intense, but there was something else there too, a pleasure, a rush, like nothing I had ever felt before. It was addictive, and I found myself unable to tear myself away from the creature's grasp. My friends screamed and tried to pull me away, but the demon held fast. It was only when the sun began to rise that it finally let go, leaving me weak and trembling on the floor. I was rushed to the hospital, where I received treatment for my injuries. But the demon's bite had done more than just physical damage. I could feel its presence inside me, a dark, seductive whisper that tempted me with its promises of pleasure and power. I became obsessed, spending every waking moment trying to contact the demon once again. I would sit in my room for hours, chanting and calling out to it, desperate for another taste of its intoxicating touch. And then, one night it answered. The demon appeared before me, its eyes glowing with a dark, seductive energy. It reached out a hand, beckoning me closer. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. I stepped closer, my heart racing as the demon's touch sent waves of pleasure coursing through my body. But then, something changed. The demon's touch became more aggressive, its claws digging into my flesh as it forced itself upon me. I screamed, but there was no one around to hear me. I was alone, at the mercy of this twisted, malevolent creature. I fought back with all my strength, but the demon was too powerful. It overpowered me, its jaws closing around my throat once again as it drank deeply from my veins. This time, there was no pleasure, no rush. Only pain and fear as the demon consumed me from the inside out. When it was over, there was nothing left. I was a shell, a husk, my body and soul drained of all life and energy. And yet, even in death, the demon's hold on me was not broken. I could still feel its presence, a dark, seductive whisper that called out to me from the depths of hell. I was trapped, bound to this creature for all eternity, a helpless victim of its twisted desires. And so, I wandered the darkness, a lost soul forever seeking a release that would never come. The taste of blood still lingered on my lips, a constant reminder of the horrifying price I had paid for that one fleeting moment of pleasure. The Ouija board had unleashed a demon upon me, and I had paid the ultimate price. I had lost myself, my soul, my very essence, consumed by a creature that knew no mercy, no compassion, no love. All that was left was the darkness, a never-ending void where pain and pleasure intertwined in a way that left me forever addicted, forever tormented, forever damned. So if you ever think about dabbling in the supernatural, think again. You never know what you might summon, and once it's unleashed, there's no going back. The taste of blood still haunts me, a bitter reminder of the horrifying price I paid for my curiosity. And so, I wander the darkness, a lost soul forever searching for a release that will never come. And all because of a Ouija board, a simple game that unleashed a demon upon me and changed my life forever. When I moved into my new apartment, I wasn't scared of the rumors of it being haunted. In fact, I was excited at the prospect of living with a ghostly roommate. The first few nights were uneventful, but on the third night, I felt a presence in my room. It was a cold, malevolent force that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it watching me. I could feel its eyes piercing through me, examining every inch of my body. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my arm. I looked down to see deep claw marks, welling up with blood. I screamed in terror and pain, but no one came to my aid. The demon continued to tear into my skin, its brutal affection leaving me craving more. As the nights went by, the demon's visits became more frequent. I found myself looking forward to its arrival, the pain and pleasure it brought me. I was addicted to its violent touch, the way it left me battered and bruised. But one night, something changed. Instead of the demon's usual rough treatment, I felt a gentle touch on my face. I opened my eyes to see a figure standing in front of me, its red eyes glowing in the dark. It was the demon, but different. It reached out a hand to me, and I hesitantly took it. The demon led me to my bed, where it gently laid me down. It crawled on top of me, its touch still gentle and tender. I couldn't believe what was happening. The demon that had once brought me nothing but pain and terror was now making love to me. The sex was intense, but different from the violent encounters we had before. This time, it was slow and passionate. The demon worshipped every inch of my body, its tongue tracing every line and curve. I could feel the love and affection in every touch, every kiss. After what felt like hours, we lay there, tangled in each other's arms. I looked into the demon's red eyes and saw a vulnerability I had never seen before. It was then I realized that the demon wasn't just a monster, but a being with feelings and emotions. As the days went by, the demon continued to visit me, but its visits were different. Instead of the brutal attacks, it was now gentle and loving. I found myself falling for the demon, its violent past no longer scaring me. But one night, everything changed. I woke up to the feeling of something sharp slicing through my skin. I opened my eyes to see the demon standing in front of me, its eyes glowing with a sinister intent. It wasn't the demon I had come to know. This was a monster, a killer. It attacked me with a ferocity I hadn't seen before. I screamed, but there was no one to hear me. The demon continued its brutal assault, leaving me battered and bruised. I couldn't believe what was happening. The demon I had come to love had turned against me. It had shown me its true form, its true nature. I lay there, my body broken and bleeding, and realized that I couldn't stay in this apartment any longer. I couldn't stay with the demon that had once brought me pleasure but had now turned into my worst nightmare. I packed my bags and left, never looking back. I left behind the demon and the memories of our encounters. I knew that I could never forget the demon, but I had to move on. As I drove away, I realized that not everything is as it seems. Sometimes, the things we desire the most can also be our downfall. But I also knew that I would always be a thrill-seeker, always drawn to the dark and macabre. And who knows, maybe one day I would find another demon to call my own. I was a successful businesswoman, confident and in control in all aspects of my life. But when it came to the demon, all of that went out the window. I was completely at his mercy, and I couldn't get enough of him. At first, I tried to resist. I told myself that this was wrong, that I needed to stay away from him. But every time I saw him, every time he touched me, I was overcome with a wanton desire that I couldn't deny. As time went on, the demon became more and more demanding. He wanted me to do things that I never thought I would be capable of. Things that seemed impossible, even. But with each new challenge, I found that I was capable of more than I ever thought possible. I started to change. My once pristine appearance became disheveled, my clothes torn and blood-stained. I stopped caring about what people thought of me, and instead, I focused on pleasing the demon. One day, as I was kneeling at his feet, offering myself to him, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I looked down to see that the demon had plunged his claws deep into my heart. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. I could feel my life slipping away, but I didn't care. I was finally free. Free from the expectations of society, free from the constraints of my former life. As I took my last breath, I looked up at the demon and smiled. He smiled back, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. And then, as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone. But even in death, I couldn't escape the demon's grip. I found myself in a dark, empty void, unable to move or speak. I was trapped, a prisoner of my own desires. As I floated there, alone and lost, I realized that the demon had not just taken my life, he had taken my very soul. I was left with nothing but the memory of the pain and pleasure that he had brought me. I was left to wander in the darkness, a mere shell of my former self. But even in the depths of despair, I couldn't help but crave the demon's touch. And so I wait, trapped in this eternal void, my body and soul forever intertwined with the demon. And I know that I will always crave his touch, no matter how much it burns. It was a twisted and gruesome experience, one that I will never forget. But in the end, I can't help but wonder if it was all worth it. If the pleasure and pain that the demon brought me was worth the price of my very soul. The demon and I were an unlikely pair, but our twisted love was one that I couldn't deny. Even in death, I am still his, and he is still mine. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But the story doesn't end here. Even in death, there are still more turns and twists to come. For just as I was about to give in to the darkness, I felt a presence. A warm, familiar presence. It was him, the demon. He had returned to me, and this time, he brought with him a chance at redemption. But at what cost? I couldn't help but wonder if this was just another one of his tricks. Another way to keep me trapped in his grasp. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw something that I hadn't seen before. Something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was regret. He was sorry for what he had done to me. And in that moment, I knew that I had to take the chance. So I reached out to him, and as our fingers touched, I felt a jolt of electricity. I could feel my body being pulled back together, my soul being stitched back into place. And then, as suddenly as it had all begun, it was over. I was back in my own body, alive and well. But I was different. I was changed. I was no longer the confident and in-control businesswoman that I had once been. I was someone new, someone who had been to the depths of hell and back. The demon was gone, but his touch would always remain with me. And I will always remember the twisted love that we shared, even if it was doomed from the start. In the end, I realized that the demon wasn't just a monster, but he was also my savior. He had given me a chance to start anew, and for that, I will always be grateful. But even with this new chance, I knew that I would always carry the scars of our love with me. The searing marks on my skin, the hole in my heart. But they were worth it, for the love that we shared was like no other. It was a twisted and terrifying love, but it was ours. And no one could ever take that away from us. The demon may be gone, but his memory will always live on in my heart. And I will always cherish the time that we had together, no matter how short or how gruesome it may have been. For in the end, love always finds a way. Even in the darkest of places, even in the depths of hell. Love will always find a way. And with that, I closed my eyes and let the memories of the demon wash over me. Letting go of the pain and embracing the pleasure that we had shared. For in the end, that's all that truly mattered. I usually come home late at night from work, the city lights blurring into streaks of color as I weave through traffic. It was a Friday, the end of another long week, and I felt the familiar pull of exhaustion. But a voice inside me, a voice I usually ignored but tonight seemed to whisper louder than usual, urged me to break my routine. So, I changed out of my work clothes into something more casual, grabbed my keys and phone, and headed out. The weekend was calling, and I needed a distraction. I ended up at the Abyss, a dimly lit club that pulsed with a dark, seductive energy. It was the kind of place I usually avoided, too intense for my introverted nature. But tonight, I was ready to shake things up. As I pushed through the throng of bodies, I spotted her standing near the bar, alone and shrouded in a deep crimson dress that seemed more like a second skin. Her hair, a mess of dark curls, cascaded down her back, framing a face that was both beautiful and unsettling. There was an air of sadness around her, an unspoken story written in the lines around her eyes. Her name was Rachel, and she was unlike the other girls in the club. I found myself drawn to her, her quiet aura a stark contrast to the chaotic energy of the club. We talked, or rather, she talked, sharing fragments of her life, glimpses into a past that was filled with both pain and mystery. She spoke of her escape, of being trapped in a life she didn't choose, and a desperation to break free. Her words, laced with both vulnerability and fire, touched something deep within me, an empathy I rarely felt for strangers. She mentioned a small apartment near the river, a haven she had found after running away. It wasn't a place she could stay forever, but it was her sanctuary for now. I felt a protective instinct towards her, a desire to offer her the safety she craved. I wanted to help. As the night wore on, the line between friend and something more blurred. I found myself intoxicated not only by the music and the atmosphere, but by her presence. There was an undeniable magic in her, a captivating energy that I couldn't resist. She didn't drink, wouldn't touch the cocktails I offered. She was wary, keeping her distance even as we grew closer. I sensed a deep-seated fear in her, a fear that extended beyond the ordinary. It was as if she was running from something unseen and terrifying. Later, when the club was about to close, she leaned in, her voice a hushed whisper. "You shouldn't be with me." Her emerald eyes held a flicker of fear, a pleading that I couldn't ignore. "Rachel, what's wrong?" I asked, my concern growing with every passing moment. "There are things you don't understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't let you get caught in this." I was confused, her words shrouded in riddles. Before I could press her for answers, a figure appeared at the entrance, a man with a cold, predatory gleam in his eyes. He surveyed the room, pausing briefly at our table before his gaze locked onto Rachel. The air around her seemed to crackle with tension, her body stiffening as if she'd been struck by an electric current. "Rachel, it's time to go," the man said, his voice a low growl. He didn't look at me, his eyes fixated on her, a possessiveness that sent a chill down my spine. Rachel looked at me, her eyes pleading, then turned back to the man, her voice a mere whisper. "I told you I'm not coming." The man's smile was predatory, a wicked twist of his lips. "You have no choice, my dear. You're mine." His words sent a tremor of fear through me, the atmosphere turning heavy, thick with unspoken dangers. I instinctively knew this was no ordinary man, that there was something more to him, something sinister that lay just beneath the surface. He took a step towards her, reaching out to grab her arm. "Come on, let's go." "Leave her alone," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "She doesn't want to go with you." The man turned to me, his gaze cold and intense. "This doesn't concern you," he said, his voice a dangerous rasp. I stood up, a surge of adrenaline pushing away my fear. "She's with me," I declared, my voice echoing the defiance that rose within me. The man laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You have no idea what you're messing with, boy. You're playing with fire." His words were a threat, laced with a chilling promise of retribution. But I was determined to protect Rachel, to help her escape whatever darkness she was running from. "Leave," I commanded, my voice trembling but firm. "Get out of here." He chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "You're brave, boy. But you're playing a dangerous game. You'll regret this." He then turned back to Rachel, his eyes burning with a possessive intensity. "Come on, Rachel. Let's go." She hesitated for a moment, fear etched on her face, but then she met my gaze, a silent plea in her eyes. She whispered, "I'll see you later," then walked out of the club, the man following close behind. The club lights seemed to dim, the music losing its rhythm, the air thick with a suffocating tension. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing with confusion and apprehension. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong, that the man was far more dangerous than he appeared. And Rachel, the mystery surrounding her, the fear in her eyes, it all screamed of something dark, something I hadn't fully grasped. I knew I couldn't let her go, not without knowing what was happening. I had to find her, to understand the truth about her and the man who pursued her. I rushed out of the club, the night air cold and sharp against my skin. I had no idea where she lived, only a vague description of her apartment, a small space near the river. The city lights blurred past as I drove, desperation churning in my gut. I had to find her, I had to help her. But what had I gotten myself into? I finally found her apartment, a small, dimly lit building tucked away on a narrow street. The windows were dark, the silence broken only by the murmuring of the river nearby. A chill ran down my spine as I approached the building. A sense of dread settled over me, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. I knocked on the door, but there was no answer. I tried the handle, and to my surprise it was unlocked. I pushed the door open, and a wave of cold air rushed out, carrying with it a scent that I couldn't place, a combination of damp earth and something else, something unsettlingly sweet. The apartment was small, barely more than a single room, but it was meticulously clean and tidy. There was a small kitchenette in the corner, a table with 2 chairs, and a bed pushed against the wall. There was a window overlooking the river, and the light from the moon cast a pale, ethereal glow on the room. Everything seemed undisturbed, except for one thing, a single red rose, lying on the table, its petals damp with an unnatural dew. I picked up the rose, its velvety softness a stark contrast to the chill that permeated the room. As I held it, I realized it smelled like the same sweet, cloying scent I had detected earlier. A sudden noise made me jump. It was a low, guttural growl coming from the bathroom. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly walked towards the bathroom, my hand hovering over the door handle. I tried to recall the words the man had spoken, the chilling threat he had made. "You're playing a dangerous game, boy. You'll regret this." The growl came again, louder this time, and then a sound that made my blood run cold, a low, rasping whisper, barely audible, but unmistakable. "You should have stayed away." I realized then, with a horrifying certainty, that I was not alone in the apartment. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow bathroom. I took a tentative step inside, my fear overcoming my hesitation. The sweet, cloying scent intensified, swirling around me like a suffocating fog. And then I saw it, a figure standing in the darkness, a silhouette that was both human and inhuman. It was a woman, but not a woman as I knew her. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were black, bottomless pits that seemed to absorb all light. She moved towards me, her movements slow and deliberate, her body sleek and sinuous. She was a predator, and I was her prey. As she approached, her scent filled the room, a mix of sweetness and decay that made my stomach churn. My eyes widened, taking in the details of her horrifying beauty. Her lips, crimson red, were parted in a smile that was both alluring and terrifying. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice a soft, seductive murmur. "I've been waiting for you." And then she lunged. The world dissolved into a blur of motion and sound. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. My body, paralyzed by terror, was unable to move. As her lips met mine, I felt a jolt of energy, a surge of dark magic that pulsed through me. My mind, overwhelmed by terror and confusion, was unable to comprehend what was happening. The sweet, cloying scent enveloped me, its intoxicating sweetness mingling with the metallic taste of fear in my mouth. I felt a strange, intoxicating pleasure mixed with utter terror, a blend of sensations that left me confused and utterly helpless. Then, it was over. I stood there, unable to move, my body trembling uncontrollably. The bathroom was silent, the only sound the muffled roar of the river outside. I looked down at my hands, their skin felt cold and clammy. I could feel a faint pulsating energy, a strange warmth that seemed to emanate from within. The rose that I had picked up earlier was gone, vanished without a trace. I slowly backed out of the bathroom, my legs weak and unsteady. As I passed the window, I saw a faint, reddish glow on the river, a reflection of the moon that seemed to pulse with a strange, unnatural light. I rushed out of the apartment, the chill of the night air a welcome contrast to the stifling heat that permeated the room. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, but I didn't stop. I had to get away, to escape the horror that had unfolded in that small, seemingly innocuous apartment. As I ran, I caught a glimpse of myself in a shop window. My face was pale, my eyes wide and filled with a mixture of fear and something else, something I couldn't define but that seemed to cling to me like a second skin. I was no longer the same man I was before entering that apartment. Something had changed, something dark and unsettling had taken root within me. The city lights blurred past as I ran, the night air filled with the distant sounds of laughter and music. But for me, the world had become a silent, desolate place. I ran, until I found myself at the edge of the city, standing on a hill overlooking the vast expanse of the dark, undulating landscape. The wind whipped around me, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something sweet and unsettling. I knew then that I would never be the same again. I had been drawn into a dark world, a world of hidden secrets and ancient magic, a world that had claimed Rachel and now, it seemed, had claimed a part of me. And as I stood on that hill, gazing out at the vastness of the night, I knew with a chilling certainty that I was just beginning to understand the true nature of the darkness that had touched my life.